I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Come on in, and if you would like to speak this evening, there are speaker cards up here in the front that you can fill out and turn in to our city clerk. So she will have a record of you wanting to speak. Just go back here, go back here, go back here. Okay, city clerk, do we have a quorum?
Sure, we'll take the roll. Councilmember Mahan, O'Neill.
Here.
Gilmore. Davis.
Here.
Watanabe.
Present.
And Kolstad.
Here.
Quorum confirmed?
Confirming a quorum.
Okay, and just for the record, so everybody knows, Mayor Gilmore and Councilmember Mahan have conflicts of interest as a result of this particular issue, and so as a result, they've needed to recuse themselves from this particular item, so that is why I will be overseeing this portion of the agenda tonight. So, that being said, I will turn to our Assistant City Manager, Manuel Pineda. Mr. Pineda.
Thank you very much. If I can have the presentation, please. Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to discuss with you an option agreement for property acquisition with Prometheus. All right, trying to make this move forward here. There we go. All right, we'll see if it works from here on out. So as we all know, the property we're discussing today is part of our downtown, and our downtown is bounded by Monroe Street, Homestead Road, Lafayette, and Benton Street. And I've highlighted the Prometheus property for you in the light blue color. And that's the property where we're looking at acquiring property for Franklin Street and Washington Streets. I don't know what I'm pressing wrong here. There we go. It's a little buggy. Maybe I can get the other one if you don't mind. I know that one works a little better. Thank you. The city and community have both been discussing and exploring downtown opportunities as we look to revitalize our downtown. But it's very important to note that at this point, there is no council-approved plan for downtown, but we do have a $400,000 proposal within the budget to start the process on a precise plan. Although there is no council-approved plan and there's no council-approved street network, there's a lot of interest in restoring the grid streets as part of the future vision from both the city and community perspective. And although there is no approved plan, we do anticipate grid streets would be 2 travel lanes, parking, and sidewalks. We do have the city downtown vision that was presented to our downtown committee. And you can clearly see that as part of that, restoring the grid streets is a huge component of it. And of course, that includes Franklin Street and Washington Street, what we're discussing today. Mm-hmm. And of course, the community also has a downtown vision. And once again, the grid streets are very prominent with Franklin and Washington Streets being part of that. So as we talk about streets, typically when you're building new streets from scratch, whether it's a new street, a widening, or trying to put a street back that used to be, typically those processes require a long-term plan. And the reason for that is because you typically won't have all the property you need at once. And that especially matters a lot when you have a lot of property owners that are affected by the new street connections. In my experience, and I've been building roads for many years, that will require a multi-year effort. And sometimes you have to build them in interim or phase construction process as you're able to acquire property to really ultimately get to that vision that you have when you're completed and you're done with it. It does require the willing participation of private property owners, especially when properties are not being redeveloped. So they're willing to work with you to kind of move the process forward. And typically to achieve success really means a partnership between the property owners, the community, and the city. And if you have a developer, of course, that developer is part of that process. Now, I do have to acknowledge Franklin Street will be difficult to implement. It is over 1,500 feet long, so it's the longest grid street that we were trying to bring back, and it affects multiple property owners. On the positive side, some of those property owners is the city, which of course makes that implementation a little easier. So when you look at restoring the grid, there are two near-term opportunities in front of us. And when you think about roads and kind of building roads for over a long period of time, you can think about near-term in a 3 to 10-year time frame, and that's for Franklin and Washington. That's because we have our city-owned property, which has its limitations, and we're going to talk about that today. And of course, because we have the Prometheus property, and Prometheus, although they're not redeveloping their site, and they have not expressed any desire to redevelop, they have voluntarily approached the city to try to work out a deal to restore us part of the grid street system. So a couple of graphics for you. This just shows you the Prometheus property. It shows your city-owned parcels, and I'll talk a little bit more about that next. And in green, you can see Franklin Street being extended all the way from Lafayette to Monroe, and you can see that it does go through multiple properties, and that's the complexity of it. And you see a small section of Washington Street that's part of this option agreement up top. Now, the nice piece about Washington is the rest of it is mostly built within city property, which would give us more flexibility. However, as I mentioned, our city property does have its limitations and challenges. There's 3 different properties there. Number 1 in green is about 1.3 acres, and that property is currently leased. That lease did not expire until 2021, so we really can't do anything until the lease expires. The red property is about 3.8 acres, and that lease runs till about 2022. So we're talking about a 4-year time frame before those properties will be ready for us. Now, the courthouse property in blue, it's a little different. We do own that property, but as part of the grand deed, we're required, if we redevelop it, we're required to still provide 112 parking spaces for the courthouse. And those parking spaces have to be contiguous to the courthouse, which creates some limitations. Now, could there be an opportunity to explore with the courthouse, kind of what the need is, the utilization? Yes, but currently we're required to replace those 112 parking spaces if we redeveloped. And it's always important to know that parking spaces do have a value to them. And typically the way you want to think of it is if you're doing a surface space, that's about $30,000. If you're doing a structure space, it's at least 60, it's probably a little higher than that nowadays, closer to 70. So when you're thinking about 112 parking spaces, they have about a $3 to $6 million value. Really what we would like to do is, as we mentioned, we're putting money for a precise plan. As part of that precise plan, working with those consultants, we also would like some help in developing an RFP for the city properties to help us start the process in soliciting development, hopefully within the time frame of those leases expiring. So of course, outside of our properties, we discussed that we have the Prometheus opportunity. And I do want to acknowledge once again, because it's very important, that Prometheus voluntarily approached the city, and there's two points to that. One is that they have communicated to us that the reason they've done this is because they would like to get some neighborhood goodwill as part of other development proposals that they have within the city. The second part is I want to acknowledge that staff will continue to process any other Prometheus proposals on their own merits and on their own land use rights. So we're keeping those two things separate, but Prometheus has acknowledged that they see some kind of neighborhood goodwill that's part of this process for them. They discussed the option with us to sell the property to accommodate the sections of Franklin and Washington Streets, but they also acknowledge that their apartment complex is very successful, and they want to make sure they can continue to operate their apartment complex. So what staff looked at is we needed to develop a roadway option that really allowed us to start restoring that grid, not have to wait till the site redeveloped, but also provided options for the site to continue to function. And we really needed to be a little creative as to how we did this. So as part of our discussions, you can see the layout as a close-up of Washington and Franklin over the Prometheus property. We know that 2 travel lanes, parking and wide sidewalks are the vision. There's different ways you can implement that. If you look at streets like Los Gatos and Campbell, those are about 60-foot roadways, including the sidewalk. You can go wider than that as well. Mountain View has wider roads than that, but there's flexibility within that. We also knew that if we touch buildings, that would be very complex construction because we'd require building demolition. And so when we got to that point, considering that there is no funding set aside for any of this work at all, it could make the project unaffordable. And what we were looking at were things like land value, right? Loss of lease revenue, as well as all the construction issues such as utility issues and code upgrades related to the building. And not having any funding, how could we come up with a program that allows us to start restoring the grid, providing public access and still be financially feasible for the city. And ultimately, as I mentioned, it had to be a creative approach that worked in partnership. So we started developing, as we typically do for major roadway projects, is let's look at a phased implementation approach to get us to that ultimate vision. And the way we did that was by coming up with flexible street sections, not necessarily implementing what ultimately the vision will be, but sections that allow us to start getting the public access and restoring the grid. So what we looked at was a 58-foot section. That's a max. And as I mentioned, there are streets like in Los Gatos and in Campbell that have similar widths to that provided the travel lanes, the sidewalks. And I wouldn't focus so much on how you split that 58 feet. It's just that it gives you that flexibility to build things within it. But we also had to acknowledge, because we're working with an existing building that's going to continue to operate, we had some limitations. One is we had a shift in the property line, and I'll show you a close-up, that made us go down to about 48 feet for a section of the roadway. And then we had an existing building that it's right on the way, and at that constraint point, we had to go down to about 34 feet as part of this phase of implementation. Oops, there we go. So just wanted to highlight those building constraints. So if you look at the top right corner, that shows you where the building's located. And if you want to envision the new street being very similar to where the drive aisle is in that picture, except it gets wider than that, you can see how that building jets out right into where the road would be. So as we were trying to fit that 58-foot cross-section through there, we knew that if we tried to do that, we were going to hit that building, and at that point, that would require building demolition and just created other concerns. We also have a property line shift. So the Prometheus property line is not straight through the entire parcel, shifts about 10 feet, and you can see that on the green drawing where the line goes down, as well as the fence line that shows the property line. And that, we had to accommodate the cross-section through there as well and try to make it work. So as we started finalizing on this interim phased implementation, we acknowledged that we had to go with a narrower street section to accommodate those constraints, such as property line changes and avoiding buildings. We worked with Prometheus on a right-of-way easement, which is pretty typical of how you take right-of-way now. And we thought in this case it was even more beneficial because it provides the same access for public access, is in perpetuity, and pets, bikes, vehicles, utilities, but also allowed the Prometheus private utilities to stay in place, which really helped us manage costs, knowing that we didn't have a budget for this project. So lastly, that would affect the cost of acquisition and construction and created a good overall picture. As I mentioned, there's no funding for construction, so we wanted to find a way to get the rights over the property, but not necessarily go build the road tomorrow, and really give us flexibility. And at the end, we ended up with an acquisition for this phase part of the implementation of the grid streets of about 36,000 square feet. Now, I do want to acknowledge that there has been a lot of discussion from the community about restoring a 75-foot street as part of Franklin Street. So staff went out there, and we looked at what that would mean to give council that perspective and see if they wanted to consider that as an option. So if we look at 75 feet coming only from the Prometheus site, we do know that would affect 3 buildings. So staff went out there and measured the site. And what we determined is that it would require demolition, at least partial demolition, of all 3 of those buildings. Now, the shaded area in red shows the 75 feet up to that point. And it's part of the building that would definitely have to be demolished. Now, I do want to acknowledge that when you demolish a building, there's no perfect line that you do. More than likely, you would have to keep going past that point. But I didn't want to exaggerate how much was needed for the 75 feet. But demolition-wise, you definitely would need more than that. For building 2, which is a building that runs more parallel to the roadway, it's a much narrower building. The demolition looks like it's a smaller portion of that facility because the way the building's laid out, my guess is you probably would want to take that whole building down to accommodate the 75 feet. And then building 3, which we talked about, that already jets out into the property, you can tell that the red shaded area really takes out a huge portion of that facility. In addition to the buildings themselves, I wanted to acknowledge that for building 1 and 3, they also have underground parking and underground utilities that if you start to demolish those buildings, you really have to account for all the underground issues associated with it and the underground structure. So it's not just the structure that's above, but also the structure that's below. Now, typically when we do streets, from a nexus perspective, or kind of we're trying to balance the needs of private property owners with the needs of the facilities, we typically like to look at what are called half streets, and that's the technical term that we use as street builders. And we try to see what's happening along parcel lines to see if we can split it between two parcels and make it more equitable. So what we did is we went and looked. Certainly we own the property at the courthouse, but that has the parking limitations. But we know we own that property. We wanted to look at the property next to the Prometheus property, which I believe is owned by Swenson. Now, that's of course, a different property owner. They haven't spoken to us. We don't know if they would want to explore property acquisition from their side and what that would cost and what the deal would be. But it would be very difficult construction as well because they have a two-story parking structure. So if you wanted to do part of the roadway on the Swenson property before they redevelop, then at that point you would have to demolish that structure and figure out how that would all work. I don't think there's any way to partially demolish that structure. You probably have to demolish the whole thing at that point to accommodate part of the Franklin Street roadway on that side. So in summary, the 75-foot street section would affect 3 buildings. It would require total or partial demolition. It does have underground parking. And once you touch a building, you have to look at the structural issues. Sometimes you have to upgrade the entire building for building codes. There's utilities. So that's just from a pure construction perspective. We did speak to Prometheus when we were trying to fit the 58. That only affected building 3. And they also talked to us about additional rent loss, additional loss to their property value. And we had an unknown cost. We did throw some ballpark numbers, and when we were looking just at affecting building 3, their ballpark was in the $20 million range. When we started looking at building 1, 2, and 3 and doing partial demolition, I think at that point, I think the council would want to considering acquiring the whole site just because you start creating so many limits out there. And they, no negotiations, just say, give me a ballpark number. And they said north of 100 to 120 million. So from a negotiations perspective, we developed the interim alignment. We thought from a financial perspective and just being fiscally responsible, it was important for us to avoid the existing buildings. And we moved forward with the option agreement. This is an option agreement, and we wanted to focus on the option length to make sure that the council had ultimate flexibility as to when they actually wanted to buy the property. And tonight we're not finalizing the option agreement. All we're asking the council to do is to acknowledge the key elements of the option agreement, and then we'll come back with a final agreement for you if you would like us to. The additional negotiations that needed to occur were parking lots. As I mentioned, there is a value to parking. And lastly, staff had to start thinking about how we would pay for acquisition, knowing there's no funding at all in the budget, and how you would pay for construction as well. So the first step when you're looking at acquiring property, of course, is appraisals. And I'm not going to go through every number with you, but the city did its own appraisal, and Prometheus did its own appraisal. And you can tell that property values, our range was between 1.83 and 3.66, and Prometheus had a higher number, about 5.5 million. The parking, our appraisal said that parking does not affect value. However, they acknowledge that it's a negotiable item. Prometheus appraisal did say we should replace the old 78 spaces. Then we had loss of rent, both permanent and temporary during construction. There's some improvements on the site, and they attached the value to that. And ultimately, what that ended up, from our appraisal, our exposure was between 3.2 to 5.3 million. And for Prometheus appraisal, our exposure was up to 7.3 million. In addition to that, I wanted to make sure I highlighted the parking spaces. We're talking about 78 parking spaces, and if you look at $38,000 to $60,000 a space, you would say that the value of those spaces are between 2.3 and 4.7. So that's on top of the total amount you see as part of the appraisals. So we went through a negotiation process, about 3 months or so going back and forth. And ultimately, we ended up with a proposal that is described as part of the key agreements for you tonight. It's 1.8 million for the property value, so we're able to negotiate to the low end on that. We agreed on no permanent rent loss. but we are proposing to pay $200,000 for temporary rent loss, no cost to the loss of improvements. And on parking, we've been back and forth quite a bit. And where we ended up is that we would replace 50% of their lost spaces on adjacent to their site, so there'd be 39 spaces, and for the other 39, we would pay $600,000, about $15,000 a space, which is about 50% the cost of it, the value of a space. So our exposure is $2.6 million. It's $1.8 million for the land and $800,000 for rent loss and parking loss. And one important note is that the 39 parking spaces that we would propose to replace, that would be until the Prometheus site redevelops. Once that site redevelops, we're no longer required to provide those 39 parking spaces for Prometheus. So the key terms that are in front of you today are: one is acquire the right-of-way in easement in perpetuity. Two would be a 10-year option. So it's important to note the benefits of the 10-year option, because all we would put at risk if we initially signed to this option would be that $90,000 non-refundable deposit. After that, we have the first 4 years of the option, of the 10-year option, where we would pay $1.8 million for the easement and $800,000 for parking and rent loss. If we're not quite ready to execute the option at that point, the council still has flexibility up to year 10, although at that point we have to do a new appraisal for the easement, and we also would add what's called CPI, which is pretty typical when you go on long-term agreements for the parking and rent. Another significant positive is that the city can purchase that easement and we can have control over it, but we don't necessarily need to start building the road immediately. So if we have a precise plan or we're putting our properties out for sale, we can say we have control over the property, but we don't have to build it just yet until we know how all the pieces fit together. So with that, as part of that, we'll allow Prometheus to continue to use the property as they currently do. That way we don't have to worry about maintaining and operating a property. And we talked about the 39 spaces at length. The last bullet point is very important. The city is also responsible for all the construction costs. So for your discussion tonight and consideration, we want to, as we were looking at this and kind of what the options were, once again, there was no funding set aside for this process, for the property acquisition, or any other work that's being done. So we looked at creatively how we can make this financially feasible, and what we're anticipating we would do is that the funding for this agreement would be a loan that would be paid back by the future sale or lease of the city downtown properties. And we're trying to be very protective of the funding sources that we already have and all the other needs that the city has. We do believe that rebuilding the grid street, as with most roadway projects, will require a multi-year phased approach, just because you have so many different properties that are affected by it. And it will require agreement from private property owners, unless those private property owners are developing. And that creates additional opportunity as part of that process. But from what we have heard, there's no timeline for redevelopment for any of those private property owners, except city properties where we do have control over once the leases expire. We believe that staff developed a creative and flexible approach that starts the process on our new grid system and creates that public access that can be so very important for new development. And I have to acknowledge that without Prometheus being voluntarily here, we wouldn't be able to do this today. Now, one of the key things I like this, and I'll highlight this one more time just because I think it's important, is that the timing works well for the city and the council as they make decisions forward. It works well from the precise plan development and the fact that we're going to be working on the precise plan if the budget gets approved over the next couple of years. And it works well with the development of our RFP for the sale or lease of our downtown properties. And ultimately, the council will have the ability and kind of make the final decision on what the vision will be, both from a land use perspective and from a transportation network perspective, with knowing that they can start the grid system just by acting on this option agreement within that 10-year period. Minimal risk of the $90,000. So with that in mind, what we're recommending today is for the City Council to acknowledge the key elements of the option agreement and authorize staff to finalize negotiations and bring forward a final agreement for council consideration at a future date. That concludes staff presentation. Of course, available for questions.
Thank you very much, Assistant City Manager. That was quite a long presentation. Now, I know that there's a discussion about do you have any diagrams, or does anybody have any diagrams showing like what the proposed road is, right? Proposed road is? I know you showed the green strip, but I know I've seen other plans as well. Are there any other plans that are going to show?
So we don't have an engineered plan yet
Okay.
for it. We do know that if we wanted to build the road immediately before, sorry, I think I have a graphic here that, let me see if I can get to it. There we go. It will. This is not an engineer plan. Typically, what we do is we will, if we wanted to build a road, we would have to look at how to best use the right of way. My expectation is it would be 2 travel lanes. It would have sidewalks, and we would fit parking in the areas where you can fit parking. It would have to have a transition point as you go around the building. And when you do those transition points, you want to soften them up. And then once you have more property, you could make that a straight road again. But in the interim, you would have to have a curb around the existing building. The only other option really is to acquire the building.
Yes, and okay. And I do understand that because the city does own some of the land adjacent to where the Franklin Street, the road is proposed to go through, that the city does own some land that could be used to potentially add to that grid.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will turn to my council members here. Anybody wish to speak at this time? No. Okay. Councilmember Colstad, anything at this time? Okay. Okay, then we will turn then to the speaker list, and we have quite a few names on the list. And so what I will do is call you up 3 at a time, and just so you know, in the interest of time, this meeting is supposed to end at 6 o'clock today, so everybody will have 2 minutes, and so we just would just respect everybody's time and adhere to that time schedule if at all possible. So I would like to call up Donna West, Linda Mello, and Anna Vargas Smith, please, to start off the speaker series, public speaking. Donna, you're up first.
Testing. Good evening, Vice Mayor Watanabe and city staff and all. I'm Donna West, and I lived in Fremont Street when this project was built. And over the last weeks, I led our research group to see how we got here with Park Central Apartments. And this has raised a few more questions that I respectfully asked this body and City Attorney Brian Doyle. In December 1986, our City Council approved the project, 72 condo project, and by spring, Prometheus Corporation should have developed an adjoining 2-story, 50,000 square foot commercial retail building. We understand the city wanted retail, and Prometheus agreed. Why isn't there retail today? Why did Prometheus break this agreement? City Council passed this 4-2. Mayor Eddie Suso, Councilwoman Judy Nadler voted against this. Mayor Suso even said after the vote, the development is going to come back to haunt us. The old quad residents were in disagreement and even sued the city and council. Now, the suit was filed to void the council's deletion of language concerning the project from the minutes of a previous meeting, and the attorney said it was without the opportunity to speak. And it was dismissed only because of timing. It was not filed within 30 days. After all this controversy in 1990, Prometheus then came back and asked for a compromise approval of renting and filling filling the University Plaza for office and retail space. This created more debate. People wanted retail in our downtown.
I'm sorry, sir? Okay, Donna, continue, please. Reset the timer, City Clerk. Thank you.
Let's back up. After the controversy in 1990, Prometheus then asked to compromise approval of renting and filling University Plaza for office and retail space. Residents wanted retail. Prometheus originally agreed to retail space. Were they in breach of contract for not delivering the retail and office space to our downtown? Prometheus said there was not enough people and activity in this area, yet the very reason for this was the paving over Franklin Street. Did Prometheus ask for the extension into Franklin Street as a contingency building the complex? Please let me know how we can get these answers. Bottom line, my point is, Prometheus Corporation promised the residents of Santa Clara much needed retail of downtown. Quad residents back then saw this need and even sued. Prometheus removed the downtown spine, Franklin Street, and then complained that there was not enough traffic to warrant retail. This is an example of a very poor deal for Santa Clara and a very lucrative deal for Prometheus. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Sir, the gentleman that gave his time to Donna, what is your name so we can take your name off the list, please? John Mello. Okay, thank you. Were you going to speak on behalf of Linda? Okay, thank you. The next speakers I have are Anna Vargas Smith, Mary Grizzle, and Patty Allman. Hi, Anna.
How are you doing?
Welcome.
Welcome. Nice warm day today.
Yeah.
I'll be pretty quick. I think Donna covered a lot of what we're concerned about. We actually wouldn't be here today if we had that 50,000 square feet that we were promised by Prometheus in 1985. You know, we would actually have a downtown. It would have been pretty much what we're trying to do today, which would have been the residential right over all that 50,000 square feet. But for whatever reasons, the council at the time didn't have the vision that you guys have today about the opportunities of having this downtown, which is, most of it is revenues. And my concern today is we have a serious opportunity to really just turn this around. History is repeating itself. Here we are once again in discussion with Prometheus and about the same piece of land. So I think we can really turn this around and look at the retail potential that is needed to make it a very viable downtown. We want the dining, we want the entertainment, we want the sidewalk cafes, all of that is really gonna be what turns our little downtown into Campbell or Mountain View, you know? So we are this close to making that happen. So I'm excited that this is on the table and we are discussing it with Prometheus. How do we move forward from here? I guess more discussion with Prometheus is needed. Ideally, we'd want 75 feet or 60, something more along the lines of what Mountain View is, what maybe Campbell is, because we do want the sidewalk cafes. We do want the pedestrian movement. We want it to go from Lafayette into Jackson Street. That would make for a very successful downtown. When we look at Mountain View's numbers, I mean, just last year for Castro Street, they did $152 million just on Castro Street. That could be us, you know? So I think the city would probably, is looking at it the same way we are, which is this is viable, it can happen, and the revenues are gonna be serious. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, Mary, and then Patty Allman and Tim Thompson.
My name is Mary Grizzle, and I remember a time back in the 60s when I stood before you and fought the second urban renewal. And so this is something very passionate for me. Reclaiming our downtown movement, it is all about acquiring the 8-block grid and getting a specific plan for the area. It will not work or function correctly until this is done. To just say that we will eventually get the 75-foot Franklin Street is a pipe dream that may never be realized, and without it, our downtown is doomed for failure. Too many malls with an alleyway divider. welcoming not the students nor the citizens, but a place to breed crime, drugs, and whatever else lurks in dark places. 55 years ago, a bulldozer ripped away our downtown. We have here a chance to bring it back. Let's not waste this chance by making more mistakes, building piecemeal. You, the city, have a chance to make right a wrong that is long overdue, indeed, a formidable challenge. Prometheus, you have Prometheus, you have a chance to...
Mary, look at me, please. Thank you.
You have a chance to go down in history as a hero, the sole person responsible for allowing it to happen. If you don't, you will go down in history as the Grinch who stole the citizens of Santa Clara their dream of having a downtown. If you choose the latter, the road ahead will not be easy here in Santa Clara. You will have made yourself its official Grinch, and you will forever be dogged as such. Santa Clara does not need a statue of a Grinch, so I am here to plead with you one last time to please, please give us back a 75-foot Franklin Street. Please be the hero of our downtown.
Thank you, Mary. Patty Allman? Okay, then welcome, Mr. Thompson. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you too. Let's just take the opportunity to restore our downtown. We've given too much of our city away to the big corporations, and I'm not going to mention names, but they're on that side of the 101. I think it's time to take it back, put the grid back in place. We want a place where we can walk, meet our neighbors, talk to them, have dinner, walk our dogs. And I don't want to go to Santana Row. I don't want to go to Mountain View. I don't want to go to Saratoga. I want to go to downtown Santa Clara. This is where I lived for the last 30 plus years. This is my home. I want the home brought back so that we can take our grandkids and have a nice time. If there's bring back the little carnivals or whatever downtown. This is where I want to walk and live. If we have the opportunity that Prometheus has come to us and said, hey, let's talk, that's great. Now the lines of communications are open. Let's take the opportunity to work on it and build it. We have the option of 10 years. If we can't get all of it what we need, we still have time. Maybe it's time we buy the whole thing. Let's take it all and then really do a good job and put Santa Clara back on the map for having a great downtown, great entertainment, great places to eat and socialize and be a good community again. We need it back. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Okay. Actually, Rod, I don't have you up yet. Jim, I've got Jim Crouch, Connie Costa, and Dan Andresek. So Jim.
Hello. My name is Jim Crouch, and I'm a member of ROD, Reclaiming Our Downtown Santa Clara, as well as a 40-year citizen of this city. I would first like to thank you, Acting Mayor, Council folks, and especially I would like to thank those people behind me. These are the people that have moved us forward to this point and towards our rebuilding of our downtown. Without these people, this would never have been possible. I was not raised in Santa Clara. I was raised in Campbell. We fortunately did not have to go through what Santa Clara did with the downtown issue. I cannot imagine what it was like with such a downtown that dates back even further than Campbell and with much more history to be totally devastated. If one looks at the surrounding downtowns such as Mountain View, Campbell, Los Gatos, etc., they will see what a success they have been to the community. Why is not Santa Clara, along with these various downtowns, but yet uniquely different? The unfortunate thing is that the Santa Clara government had chosen the route of urban renewal in the 1960s. Does this mean the resurrection of the downtown Santa Clara cannot happen? I I, many others, including the people behind me, say no. It can and should happen. Not since the 1960s, there's not been such an intense movement to give back to the citizens of Santa Clara a chance, I say chance, to bring back the historic Santa Clara downtown, the true heart of our city. It must be done correctly and perfectly, or nearly as such. It cannot be guided by the needs of contractors, but must be respected by such. Contractors have done very good by the city of Santa Clara. We, the city, have given much, and now is the time for our community of Santa Clara to receive. I would think that now is the time for contractors who have benefited in the past and are currently benefiting to show goodwill toward the city and its community for all the millions of dollars in projects they have received from us. We should see this in our downtown Santa Clara.
Mr. Crouch, if you could wrap it up, please. You've run over your time, sir.
Just give me the time. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
One very important part of our downtown is that it must protect those businesses who are there and want to remain in our historic area. We want them to be successful. They deserve the utmost loyalty and nourishment in our rebirth of our downtown. If you look at the definition of word legacy, one general definition means anything handed down from a predecessor. Why am I bringing this up? You, acting mayor and city council, will leave one day. What will be your proudest and most heartwarming legacy? I have nothing against Levi Stadium, nor do I have against City Place, but is that really the true legacy that you want to leave behind? I think not. I feel downtown Santa Clara should be and will be. The downtown Santa Clara is the heart of the city, period. Behind you on the wall is the emblem of the city of Santa Clara, the Mission City. At the bottom reads 1852. The city of Santa Clara had its beginning, and where was that? All of us in a room, and elsewhere, nowhere. It was a historic Franklin Mall area. The downtown area of Santa Clara, that was, still is, and forever will be the heart of Santa Clara. For you, acting mayor and council members, you have the biggest chance to leave a legacy and make it happen, but you need to do it right. It is a rebirth of the city of Santa Clara's downtown. If done correctly, it will be a fantastic gathering place for Santa Clarans as well as others from neighboring cities. Years down the road, it will be written or spoken that you were the ones to bring back the heart to Santa Clara, the downtown. Or will it be said that yes, they had the chance to bring back the downtown to Santa Clara, but they did not, or they did not do it correctly? What will be your true heartfelt legacy to the city? Let me reiterate again that not only must a historic town come back, but it must be done correctly. It must be accommodating to its businesses, citizens who live in and near that area, and of course be financially viable.
Thank you. Your time is up again, sir. I'm sorry.
I wanted to thank you. That was the last page.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Andrzejczyk, Adam Thompson, and Patricia Lung. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon, council members, city management, planning, and staff. My name is Dan Andrzejczyk, and I am co-chair of Reclaiming Our Downtown. We are celebrating our second birthday, and we've grown from 5 members to 3,500 members in that time. Since then, we've been doing a number of things, getting a little trouble, but we've been out surveying citizens, and 4 out of 5 Santa Clarans not only want a downtown, but they want to see the return of the original straight street grid as a top priority for this city. Important because it's a gathering place for holidays, parades, celebrations. It's where we come together. Now, the original Prometheus deal presented to our group was we were looking at a return of the original Franklin Street. And I'm sorry, I have foils. Oh, I blew it. There's foils up. So if we could, showing foil 2 of the Franklin Street, as well as Washington Streets. Although we still want a precise plan before doing anything, we saw this as a good thing. The plan before us is not what we originally discussed with both entities. Prometheus, again, gets what they want, and we get half of Franklin Street. It cuts Franklin Street in half, and this foil that I hope we can show shows the delta between the original 75 Street and the 36-foot street right there. Now, again, forgive me, I don't have PowerPoint. I just did a little felt pen. But that's the exact cut-in, and you can put lipstick on it, but that's exactly how it looks. It creates an irrational curve in the street. It kills any chance of any retail succeeding on Santa Clara's downtown's most important street. Next foil, please. I got it. So after 54 years, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at taking a downtown, the potential of the downtown, and turning it into 2 barbells with a 35-foot, I don't want to call it a road even. It's a 2-lane road. It's 5-foot sidewalks. There's no way you're going to get outdoor dining. And I don't think it's what anybody wants. We're replacing it with 2 mini malls connected by a 35-foot alley. Over these 2 years, we've met with those rare national retailers who are actually making it during this post-Amazon apocalypse. They're telling me what they must have, and it's a 70-foot plus street with a lot of foot traffic and a lot of traffic outside of that. Many urban planners we have talked to, Michelle. There she is. Oh, okay. God, I'm going to go on forever. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry.
I'm kidding.
We have our limitations.
Many urban planners we've talked with have said that even though this is a, quote, foot in the door, and we've heard that a lot in a lot of our private discussions, this can indeed become permanent, and there's other examples in California and outside of California where something that was temporary became permanent. We've waited 54 years. You deserve an incredible downtown. I and my group are adamantly saying no to making this Franklin Street. We are not just saying it's a bad plan, which it is. We are done making deals until we have a complete plan, and you should ask for more. This deal is not baked. It has been under negotiated and should be given back for additional work. In the interim, absolutely no road development or infrastructure should be put in place surrounding these 35 feet, because once you do that, along comes a building and you get that curved street, and it's a permanent testimony to a bad plan. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate your time as well. Adam Thompson, Patricia Leung, and Jonathan Evans. Good afternoon, Adam.
Sorry about that. I thought he was going to use his whole 4 minutes. Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for being here. This is only an option. We are still far from pavement, but this is the first step to obtaining the right-of-way of Franklin and Washington Streets. As our draft-specific plan is coming about, this is the first time in almost 30 years we know we can have the right to put Franklin back through the middle of our downtown. We have this opportunity today because the community has been asking for more. Instead of waiting, we got together and we asked the developer for what was possible. This opportunity is a result of the creativity and cooperation of the community, the city, and the developer Prometheus. It is an exemplary case of all these parties working together to get something done and move forward. I want to thank the city staff for realizing that timing is everything. They worked hard since they came on board in November, and even as they were learning about the downtown history of Santa Clara, they jumped into this and have stuck with us. I also want to thank Prometheus for taking the time to sit down with the community, listen, and take us seriously. This is a unifying time for this community. With the leases in the downtown ending within the next few years and the vision from the community coming together, now is the time to start gathering our options. The more options we have when we sit down and start drafting our plans for the downtown, the stronger and the more practical the plan will be. It is rare when there is an overlap between possibility, practicality, and timing. It is even rarer that we recognize these opportunities when they present themselves. I ask you tonight to recognize this opportunity in front of you in the key elements before us tonight and enable the city staff to subsequently sign this agreement. Please take this opportunity.
Thank you. Patricia, and then Jonathan Evans and Frank Lemon.
Council members, my name is Patricia Long. I am a relatively new Oquad resident and a member of the Oquad Residents Association. Thank you for allowing us to voice our opinions on this opportunity to open up the right-of-way through Franklin and Washington streets. This agreement will give us the time and something concrete to hold on to as we generate the downtown-specific plan. As someone who grew up in Cupertino, I spent a lot of time in Murphy, in Sunnyvale, and also like a lot of time on Castro and Mountain View. The only times my family really came down to Santa Clara was to get Korean food on El Camino. I never knew there's such rich history in the heart of the city until I started talking to my amazing neighbors, and many of whom are sitting in this chamber today. I really appreciate the leadership of the Oquat Residents Association in the unwavering belief in rebuilding a downtown that fits the characteristics of the neighborhood. I also appreciate the passion of the Reclaim Our Downtown group to bring this issue to the forefront. And last but not least, the city staff who took the residents' idea to heart to make this happen. It would be a great disservice to residents and visitors alike if we don't take this opportunity to open up the path that we can build upon in the future. So I urge you to take this opportunity to embark on the first step in building a real downtown in the heart of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Jonathan, and then Frank and Rod Dunham, please.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Evans, and I live just around the block from our downtown. Since moving here, I feel Santa Clara has been missing something, that sense of community and a place that the downtown brings. I got excited when the city started having its revitalization meetings to create a place for the community. And at the meetings, the community gave its feedback, and by the end, there was the beginnings of a plan to restore downtown to Santa Clara and bring back the street grid. I really want the city to take this opportunity that's presented itself and return the right-of-way of Franklin and Washington back to the citizens of Santa Clara. This shows the city and the citizens are serious about the long-term development of the downtown core. After we get our rights back for Franklin Street back, we must continue to work on a downtown-specific plan to show developers what we, the community, want for our downtown. I wasn't here 50 years ago to see the old downtown, but I'm here now, and I will be here for the next 50 years to plan to see the new one. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So we have Frank, Rod, and then Rob Meyer.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Frank Lemon, resident of Santa Clara. My wife and I residents for 28 years. We've been waiting that long to go to our downtown. I sure hope that we'll be able to see some progress made on it before we go much further. I just want to stress the emphasis, to emphasize to the council the vital importance of a precise plan and a form-based code in whatever we do. Otherwise, we're going to end up in the same boat that we have now, where we have piecemeal development, and then we have people who are occupying parcels that when we want to do something, it's not going to work out well with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's important, just like in an engineering job, for instance, my company is moving 35 million users from one database to another this very evening. I can guarantee you we don't do something like that without a precise plan, and we've been working on it for well over 2 months. So I would urge the council to keep that in mind with whatever plan is decided. Also, I want to speak about the street width. I went out and measured my street last night. It's 40 feet, curb to curb. So we're talking about necking down the main street of downtown to less than a residential city street. Personally, I don't see how that's going to work. So I'm hoping we can do much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So Rod, then Rob Meyer and Noreen Carlson.
Council, good afternoon. I'm I'm here to bring a little bit of history of Franklin Street. All the talk is about downtown. I'm a fourth generation. I live over in the Old Quad neighborhood, as did my family many, many decades ago. Fourth generation. I live on Benton Street. So I'm gonna be talking about Franklin Street for a second to kind of put things into perspective. There is a long history and importance of Franklin Street in our city. This one main artery into our Santa Clara became legend in the building of a town that eventually became our beloved city. Perhaps no street within the city of Santa Clara is more important or has more history than our own Franklin Street. As part of the original city grid laid out in 1847, it has not changed location in over 150 years. Immigrants flocked to our town from the Southern Pacific Railway. Soon shops, businesses rose up down Franklin Street. A trolley system was set up down the Alameda to connect both San Jose and Santa Clara. And residents depended on this roadway, Franklin Street, and the town of Santa Clara literally grew up around it. It is still a very critical transportation hub today and can be again. German businesses grew up in the area, as well as Italian families fostered in that area. Bakeries, beer bottling plants, saloons, paint shop, pharmacies, other businesses essential to the daily lives of local inhabitants. This has added much to the gathering. The site on which the Edward M. Dowd Art and Art History Building sits at Santa Clara University on Franklin Street at Alviso Street was once a thriving community of immigrant families with strong work ethics, dreams of better lives, and the determination to make them happen. Santa Clara's origins are that of a blue-collar town. Marty Bolland, a longtime resident of Santa Clara, summed it up when he said, this area during the American period, when he said, the town lived by the factory whistle. Franklin was, is, and will always be Santa Clara's most treasured and beloved street, and soon again will be the street that is the home to the heart of our beloved city, the return of our historic downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Rob Meyer, Noreen Carlson, and then Marie Meyer. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council and staff. Rob Mayer. I used to sit on the Planning Commission and Architectural Committee, and I went through the general plan process when I was a Planning Commissioner, and it was very excruciating. So what I'm really excited about is that we're talking about a specific plan, because that's what I even mentioned back then. There's a lot of passion and energy here, which is great for the community and the future. I look at this as a stepping stone. I think at some point you have to realize that it's private property and that we can't walk through it right now. It's someone else's property. This gives us an opportunity to, one, grab some of it at current day rates. If we wait 5 or 10 years, it could be a lot more to buy it as well. So I look at it as grabbing that opportunity now. If I'm going to use an analogy like baseball, if you hit singles, eventually you score runs. We tore our downtown by swinging for the fences and trying to hit a grand slam, and look what happened. So I'm not a huge risk taker, but I also have faith, being a designer, that if we can create critical mass with some of the properties that we own, with starting the downtown, putting people down here. If you learn from San Jose, 30 years of redevelopment, and they finally realized they had to put housing downtown to make it viable, commercial and retail. So I appreciate what Prometheus is doing. They didn't have to come here and do this, okay? It's an opportunity. It's 90 grand for even 4 years. We can opt out, but it gives us 10 years to do something. And again, maybe down the line we'll do land swaps and other things, but I think it's a small risk to take this right now. And similar to what Bart didn't come around the Bay Area, and Santa Clara County decided they didn't want to do, well, now look at what they're paying for it. So I don't want to do that here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. So Noreen, and then Marie Meyer and Sam Sue. Good afternoon, Noreen.
Good afternoon, Council. It's good to see everybody. Be back in the
You
land
too.
of the living. I am really appreciative to Adam and the city and Prometheus, because we wouldn't be here. Adam took over as Old Quad president, and I love him. He could be my son, but we won't talk about that. So I know there's a lot of passion in here. I'm getting to know new neighbors. The Old Quad is really special. My son-in-law just moved down here. They had an apartment in downtown San Jose, but they have a little girl who will be 1 on Sunday. They love the Old Quad. They say it feels different. The neighbors talk to you. My girlfriend bought the beautiful house on Fremont and Lafayette that needs to have a middle lane thing. But anyways, and she loves it. She says people came and gave phone numbers. We have a special place, and I know that everybody wants to make it really special by giving the downtown. I'm practical. I'm in construction. We have to be practical on this, and we have to be willing to compromise. That doesn't mean the long-term compromise. We can keep fighting for that extra footage, but I think that you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. That's horse for Californians. But and I think that we really need to work with this situation, and I know the city is for us and not against us. I thank God for the new staff that are negotiating in behalf of the citizens. I've seen tremendous, tremendous change in the last 2 years, and I'm just very grateful for this, and I am excited, and I know you're going to do your best to do the best for our downtown.
Thank you, Noreen. So, Marie, welcome.
Thank you. For 50 years, we've talked and argued about downtown Santa Clara, but tonight we have the opportunity to actually get behind this option, and which opens up a number of possibilities for us in the future. I don't think it's necessary to list the merits of having a specific plan. I know the community has said they're on board, and council's voted to start that process about a month ago. So today I want to talk about what it would actually take to make an executable specific plan. Unlike other modern downtowns, the ground on which our downtown Santa Clara historically stood is currently occupied and owned by a smorgasbord of developments, private property, university holdings, and city land. A couple people, including Manuel, have said this earlier tonight. But each of these entities have invested money in their piece of it, and they're not going to want to lose that money. We've been reminded by parcel owners at a number of council meetings of that already. So it's unrealistic to expect these players to support a downtown if they're not going to be making money or getting fair deals along the way. And so each piece represents a compromise that must be reached between the developers, the citizens, the university, and the city government. So I think that's an important distinction. Parcel by parcel development has become a very dirty word, but it's not that we want to develop parcel by parcel, but we must commit to having a downtown parcel by parcel. So today, we have a particularly special piece of downtown in front of us, although I hope that this deal is just the first of many creative compromises and negotiations that come forward. I want to thank the city staff, the citizens, and Prometheus for working together to get to this point. And so planning and building a downtown Santa Clara is no small task. We need all of the options we can get. The consequence of the arrangement as it's presented tonight is that our downtown is guaranteed some sort of main artery. When we start and refine our plan, this means that we can at least face the buildings toward the middle of our downtown. So I ask the council tonight to take this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. Okay. Sam, and then Alyssa Thompson and Stephen Codine. Good afternoon, Sam.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sam Sayu, and I'll be up front with you. I no longer live in Santa Clara, but I grew up in Santa Clara. I went to Santa Clara High School. I worked at the theater. I patronized, along with my friends, most of those downtown businesses, all small family-owned businesses, all destroyed by urban renewal. And as a high school kid, and when I first left to go into the Marine Corps, buildings were starting to be taken down one at a time in various parts along Franklin Street. And in my naivety, I expected new buildings one at a time that were similar in design and function to replace those along Franklin Street. When I first came home on leave from boot camp, Franklin was still there for the most part. The theater was still there. The smoke shops and the bowling alley, Greyhound Depot, they were all still there. By the time I got back a couple of years later from Okinawa, there was a small mall down at one end and what looked like a war zone at the other end. And while that's mostly been turned into parking and some trees it still doesn't serve the purpose of a downtown. And we're hearing a lot of talk about Franklin Street, which is important. I think you need to take the opportunity and do it right. You need a fully functional Franklin Street, but even that's not enough. Those cross streets have to be reopened wherever that's possible. A friend of mine from high school, his parents had an auto repair business on Washington, right around the corner from the church. That business died when the cross traffic was cut off along Washington Street. So we need to bear all of that in mind. It has to be a place that's inviting and utilitarian as well. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for your service. Okay. Alyssa, and then Stephen and Mark Kelsey. Good afternoon.
Hello. I love history and I believe in studying it so that we don't repeat mistakes. But I also know from personal experience and common knowledge that sometimes when we make a mistake, we get scarred by that, and the anxiety that builds up from that mistake makes us not objective in our future decisions because we're scared we'll make decisions that are bad again. I'm up here because I was not alive for the old downtown, and I didn't grow up in Santa Clara, but I live in the old quad now, and I have hopes and dreams of bringing my now 14-month-old son to a better developed downtown than what we have. And from my perspective, maybe it's just having seen my son learn how to walk, this is the first step. And I feel that I will be able to walk through and teach him about what Santa Clara was, how we came to where we are, why this district is important, and have enjoyable and a historically important experience with him in the future, regardless of if the street is in the exact same footprint of where it was, or if it's scooted over by 10 or 20 or 30 feet. That difference is not going to mean that I won't be able to enjoy downtown. And I think this option is so important for the city to take from a present and future perspective. I know it's not 100% pure to what we once had, but it is so close, and it is the right step to bring us to what we really want to enjoy in the future, that I really hope the council will take advantage of it.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. And we got Stephen, Mark, and then Michelle Sandoval.
Hello, Council. Thank you for having us this evening. Stephen Golding's my name, and I'm a Santa Clara kid, born and raised. Probably wouldn't have known that a downtown existed unless it was from my mom taking me to the farmer's market once a week, or maybe the post office. And I bet that a lot of the people coming to our city don't know where downtown Santa Clara is. So it's all been really interesting for me to learn about the history that it had, and learn that it was popping in the 60s, and it's been a dust bowl through the 70s, and just to see what used to exist. And it's pretty cool to think that it could exist again. Growing up, I got to go to, or was forced to go to, Campbell, Los Gatos, Mountain View, neighboring downtowns that are really cool places. And I think it'd be really awesome to see it come back, a full 75-foot width street. I think these options are really cool that we've got this stuff laid out in front of us. So I'm excited about it. Hope everyone else here is too. Obviously, we hear a lot of excitement. So thanks for giving this a thought and taking the time.
Great to hear the millennials are excited about it too. Thank you, Stephen. So Mark Kelsey, Irene Kimur Kern, and Gil Villagran. Welcome, Mark.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I believe we're all here for the same reason. We believe in reclaiming downtown. We believe in bringing downtown back to Santa Clara. So we're all here for the same goal. And I have to say, there's been a lot of work over the last couple of years to get us to this opportunity, to bring this opportunity to us today. And I really urge the Council to take this opportunity. I think it's important to say thank you to Prometheus for listening to the residents. I think it's important to say thank you to the staff for the hard work that they put into taking an idea and turning it into something that's practical and executable. I want to say thank you to the Council for making this a priority and listening. And most of all, thank you to everybody that's here that's expressing an opinion and making this such an important opportunity and making it possible for us to take this opportunity. This is really a significant and positive step. I don't see there's any downside to this. This is an option. This is a first step. It gives us a step toward what we want to build. The only downside is if we pass up this opportunity, if we put more delay and more time and further inaction. We've seen way too much of that. We have momentum now. Let's take this opportunity. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mark. Irene, Gil, is Irene still? Okay. There. I see. Okay. Thank you, Irene. Mr. Villagran, and then Andrew D. and Emmy Moore, Minister. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Gil Villagran. I grew up on Jackson Street, went to Scott Lane, Wilson Middle School, and Santa Clara High School. We came from Mexico. I was 5 years old, 6 kids, low-income family. Everything we needed was downtown. The bakery, there was a shoe repair. There weren't that many Mexican families like I was. There was actually a tortilla factory right on Main Street.
Wow.
We bought fresh tortillas there every Saturday. Every Saturday we were downtown. Every day after school, my sisters, I have 4 sisters, we took dance lessons right on Franklin Street. Frederick and Acela Dance Studio. They had hundreds of kids go there all the time. They taught all kinds of dance classes. I didn't take I'm not into dancing, but my sisters did. We had everything downtown. We went to the movies every Saturday. It was 25 cents to get in, 10 cents to buy popcorn. Let's see, what else? Imagine what you had from the train station through the university, through Franklin Street, all the way to the Carmelite Monastery. Many of you have probably never been at the monastery. There's the most beautiful church inside there. It's the best example of Italian Renaissance architecture in the New World. How do I know that? There's a brass plaque that tells you. Jack London lived there when he wrote The Call of the Wild.
That's right.
So we have this fantastic thing. So let me just say, you've heard of the American dream? The Santa Clara dream was what I lived, and then it was all torn down. Now I live near, can we, 2 more minutes? I mean, 1 more minute. I'm sorry, 1 more minute.
Who's running the show?
Everything's a negotiation. I now live near downtown San Jose, and San Jose did the same stupid thing. They destroyed everything. And it's been, well, they have a lot of parking lots and great hotels for people that don't live there and can't afford to go there. So you had a gem, and your predecessors destroyed it. Rebuild it. Please, please rebuild it.
Thank you very much, Gil. We always appreciate the historical perspective that, people that lived here 60 years ago bring back and just remind everybody of what existed in the downtown. We really appreciate that. Andrew D., are you still here? Okay, come on up. And then we have Emmy Moore, Minister, and Charles Viso. Welcome.
I'm Andrew. I don't live in Santa Clara, but I live nearby in San Jose. But I did decide to start my company in Santa Clara. And it's a small business. And the thing that I like so much about Santa Clara is the community, not just the people that live here, but also the small businesses. They all tend to help each other out. And I think with business, it's always taking a risk. And I think that taking this opportunity could be that risk that creates a really big change down the road. So I ask you guys to please take the opportunity.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for bringing your business to Santa Clara. Emmy, and then Mr. V.
Good evening. I'm Emmy Moore, Minister, and thank you for having me here today and allowing me to share a few words. And to those behind me, in case you didn't know it, I'm so old, but I helped found the Old Quad Homeowners Association. Somebody wanted to build a high-rise across the street from our house that was about 8 stories high. the seniors that were already living in a high rise like that weren't happy. So we spent hours and hours, just like you have, to be able to make the downtown better. We went through, it was the Lou Farias, myself, the Millers, the Bulls, and many people who are not here today. There are a lot of new faces with new energy. But what did it take? It took compromise. I'm excited about this, the fact that we could even have an opening. Some little bit of a gateway is really, really heart-tugging for me. Who would have thought that I would have actually had the opportunity because of that to go on and chair this planning commission, to be the first woman to chair it. And it was a lot of hours and times then sitting on the other side. I'd like to thank the council. I'd like to thank the community. It takes community, it takes council, it takes collaboration, it takes a developer that's willing to work through this. And gosh, I wish it was really wide, but this will work. Santa Clara is not San Jose, we're not Los Gatos, we're not Montessori. We are Santa Clara, and part of our history will be why we have a 35-foot drive. But I know the charm is coming back, and we're, thank you to all of you for what you're doing to make Santa Clara what I was always hoping it would be. Thanks.
Thank you, Emmy. Mr. Viso? Charles Viso? You're our the last card that was speaker that we have.
My name's Charles Viso. I don't have enough time to explain what I know about this whole project, but I will tell you this much. This particular 76, 35, whatever you want to call it, feet, actually started to come into being able to be talked about a year ago, last February. I had broached it with Prometheus and pretty much got cold water thrown on it because it's a big thing with 70 some odd feet there. About last November, Adam Thompson met me over at City Lights and said, "I'd like to talk to you. It's our plan." And he met me over at my office and we talked for quite a while. And I told Adam, I says, you know, I'd really like to see what you've got going there go through. But he had been talking to Prometheus, and it was getting, come see, come saw, it was not sure where it was getting, but I told him, I says, you got one opportunity to do what you really want to do, what's the dream of a lot of the citizens out here. Because Prometheus has the 318 units approved that was approved by Irving. They're only looking for 30 some odd more units or 355. And without that, they went back to the 318. This wouldn't even exist. Am I out of time?
Yes, sir, you are. I can give you a couple more seconds. Anybody want to give me some time? Because I think it's pretty important what I'm going to say. Yes. Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyway, you have one opportunity to do this. Prometheus doesn't have to do this. They could build a 318 and you won't have 6 inches to go across there. That's not what I want to see. That's not what Prometheus wants to see. Anyway, I told Adam, I says, the only way you're going to get this done is the city fathers have to realize how important this is to the citizens in the area. Whether it's, you know, I think it's almost ridiculous when you sit there and say 35 feet or 72 feet. You're talking about something that could be very instrumental to the downtown. And might laugh at me, but it's only money. And we're really not talking about that much money from what you've got there. But it's got to be the city fathers who are going to decide what they're going to do with that. Prometheus has cooperated with an opening, which I'm very happy they did. And I mean, I sit here and I may get the wrong view, but they sit there and they say, well, we don't have the money to do this. If we're arguing about $90,000, how are we going to argue about $5 or $8 million? And I don't know the numbers, so I'm just throwing those numbers out there. But I think it's kind of ridiculous when the park fees on this were originally about $2,500. They've been raised to $26,000, $28,000. That's $10 million on 355 units. I guess I'm going to leave it with this. If it's really that important to the citizens, you've got an opportunity to do this, or you could walk away from it and they'll build their 318 and we'll be sitting with nothing, which I think would be a travesty. I think that the city has to look at it and find out how important this is to the people and come up with a way to make it happen. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Viso. This gentleman, I see you filled out a card. You can turn it into the clerk after you're finished. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Matt Hancock. I've lived in Santa Clara my entire life. I really think this would be a huge opportunity for the city to take, and I coach both my son's teams, my son's baseball team, my daughter's softball team. After the events or after games, we always look and try and find somewhere to go, and unfortunately, we're pretty limited in our options. A lot of the time we end up having to go out of the city, and if we jump on this opportunity, I think that would be a great area. I think this is a huge opportunity, and I don't think this is something we really want to pass up and risk missing out on. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Okay, I think there's another Thompson that would like to speak. The whole Thompson family, I think, has spoken this evening. Nothing wrong with that.
Good evening. So my name's Dawn Thompson. I'm actually Adam Thompson's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say thank you. That's a compliment for someone else to say that they'd like to be his mom. But I do want to say that we have lived in this city. We raised our kids here. My husband and I grew up in the city of Santa Clara. In the city of Sunnyvale. But our son is one hell of a Monopoly player through his life.
Now we know.
Yeah. So you got a good strong base there. He's very good to work with people, and I look forward to whatever comes out. We've raised our kids to dream, so they'll dream.
Thank you, Dawn. Yes. Okay, that is the end of the cards. If there's anybody else that would like to speak, Mr. Gama, I see you approaching the podium. Come on down, as they say.
Good evening. I just want to say one thing from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank all of you.
Okay, you have to talk up here, Mr. Gama. Look, thank you.
I was 30 years old when they destroyed our town. I was born and raised here. Downtown Santa Clara was the ultimate. Going to the theater, you name it, it was all there. And I'll never forget the night when it was voted in the council chambers at that time. We all walked out, led by Bill Wilson. It was a disaster. It brought tears to my eyes to see those buildings go down. It was just awful. I remember all those particular businesses. The bowling alley was my favorite place. I used to set pins for 11 cents a game. That's where I made my election. He got me to, the Greek down there got me to sign up for my Social Security, but the rat never took it out. I took money out of mine, but never put it in there. But anyway, I just want to thank all these people, and you people here are the to get behind this project, and let's do it. I know it probably won't happen in my lifetime. Probably won't see it, but anyway, Let's do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gallman. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't have any other cards. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? If not, we will close public comment and bring it back here to the dais. We are still discussing. Thank you. We're okay. Back here, Mr. Kolstad, I see you have pushed your button.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. First of all, I didn't think this was going to go this great. I want to thank you all for coming. But I have a lot of special thank yous. I want to thank Rod and Dan and Mary and the folks for reclaiming our downtown, for having a vision. I also want to thank probably my main person is Assistant City Manager Pineda for coming up with a great compromise. I want to thank John and Marilyn from Prometheus for bringing this deal forward. I want to thank Noreen Carlson for saying, be practical. I want to thank Rob Mayer for saying, you have a clear understanding. Adam Thompson, you're a peacemaker, buddy. You should negotiate foreign treaties. You said this is a step in the right direction. I heard so many people saying so much stuff about the old downtown. You know, like the Santa Clara Theater that Mr. Vasconcellos ran. He was Senator Vasconcellos' dad. And he would sit there with kids until their moms and dads came for him after the show if it was dark. Bruna's Deli, where Mr. Bruna would give you a hot dog or a slice of cold meat while your mom was shopping. Wilson's Bakery, where you could get the Spanish cookies that everybody loved. Warburton's Tamales. You didn't want to go too close to Warburton's Tamales, especially at Christmas time, you'd get run over. And the reason was, if somebody saw you near there when you were a kid, Phil and Shan's card room was right there, and you didn't want your mom hearing that you were over at Phil and Shan's card room. And then that end of town, they had the Club Toledo and Durgan's Bar. You don't want to be anywhere near there if you were a kid and get spotted. But your dream can be realized if the city council will approve the staff recommendation on this deal. This is the first step in the right direction, and thank you all for showing up. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Kolstad.
I move we approve the staff recommendation.
Do I have a second?
You have a second.
Okay. Any further discussion, Councilmember Davis? I see you're push your light.
I had my light on. I guess through all of your testimony, which was extremely passionate, and going through a year of our little plans that we had at different community meetings all over the city, the first thing that kind of came to issue was a trust issue with Prometheus, and I think that was pretty clear in the beginning. But as you all started to speak, you seem to be more gravitating to the fact that if we all work together as a team, this is going to happen. So I think it morphed somewhere in that conversation, which was great. I was so glad to hear this. As far as buying land, I think the city has been real clear about our 10-year plan and what was happening. So I don't know if I don't think we would be able to afford to buy something right now to make this 75 feet in completion. I want to thank Adam Thompson. I do agree. You are a negotiator like I've never seen in my life. So I don't know if you gave people some incentive when they went to North Korea lately, but you seem to have some influence there. To all of you, you have a strong passion. I moved here 18 years ago and asked Teresa O'Neill where the downtown was, and she goes, it's gone. I had no idea that a council could take under urban renewal and just destroy businesses and people's lives and really a lot of memories that you have. I didn't get to share any of that with you, but I think we're gonna rebuild this, and we're gonna rebuild it in a very precise way. We have $400,000 for consulting. We're gonna do the precise plan. We are moving forward with this, and thanks to Mr. Kolstad for making the motion. I hope you're all gonna walk out of here very, very happy. So thank you all for coming and sharing all your stories.
Thank you. Member O'Neill.
Thank you. So I guess I'm a little younger because when I went to the theater, it cost 35 cents. There was inflation. Um, but one of the things that I tell people a lot is politics is the art of incremental change. And, you know, we all know that there were things that happened in the past that, you know, we don't like. And I can remember my dad saying, why the heck does a town like Santa Clara need one-way streets? Well, you know, they changed a lot of these streets. When if you look at the way that some of the grid got changed, it was because they really thought they were going to have this huge downtown with big buildings, and they rerouted streets all over the place and took out some houses to do it and all of that. So, you know, obviously, so we have an example of something that didn't work. We may have several examples of things that didn't work. But one of the things in the staff report, it does say, while the ultimate vision will likely require additional right-of-way, an interim or phased roadway will start the multi-year process of restoring a grid system. So I think we have to acknowledge that this is going to be an incremental change process, but I think if we take this first step and do this, this sends a signal to Santa Clara University and their donors. It sends a signal to you know, Barry Swenson, who owns substantial properties. It sends a signal to the individual landowners in the Franklin Mall buildings, who some of them are like, no way, Ray, am I ever changing this? So I think if they start, if everybody starts to see, okay, there is intent, where you know there's a plan is beginning, then you have people willing to get more on board and to be open to, like, what could we do? And I know Councilmember Davis and I have had some discussions with some of those landowners, and I've had some discussions with people at the university, you know, and I think we could really do something. But I think we do have to acknowledge the fiscal realities and put the stake in the ground. And who knows, maybe if we get started on this, you know, the Prometheus Corporation, they may decide that they want to do that they want to do something different with a part of their property. You know, we're seeing that happen with some other pieces of property. So, but I do thank all of the community that has been so articulate in framing their vision, and the work of the staff to take that vision and to start to make something concrete of it. You know, that's very much appreciated. So I will enthusiastically be supporting Councilmember Kolstad's motion.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. I too, you know, my husband and I moved here in 2005, and so this is all, you know, new history for us. But, you know, we do definitely understand the importance of the downtown, and from talking to people and participating, you know, in the urban, with urban planners when we met here and over at the library, and people from the community were engaged in, you know, putting a plan together, what they'd like to see in the downtown again. It was very exciting to be a part of that process. And, you know, all of you here are just an example of how much you care about, you know, the downtown and bringing it back. I too, you know, I want to thank, you know, Manuel, our assistant city manager, you know, coming on board. I mean, you just jumped right on this and took the bull by the horns, basically, and started to work with Prometheus and the community, you know, and trying to put a plan together to make this happen. And thank you, city manager, for delegating, you know, $400,000 to start a precise plan. And I believe a task force was part of that decision as well. So that's very important, because we're going to need a task force. We're going to need you to help put this together. So thank you, Prometheus, for also stepping up to the plate and making this really a win-win situation. I know Santa Clara University is also very excited about this. They want to see their students stay in Santa Clara. They don't want them getting on the train and going up to Palo Alto and Mountain View, whether or not they have 60-foot streets or not. They want them here in Santa Clara. They want them close to home. So this is an opportunity to keep the students safe and also just have a place for them to be. And I know there are a lot of other exciting ideas that came about as a result of the community meetings that would be beneficial to their families when they come to visit. So there's all kinds of opportunities here. This is a great start. And thank you very much for coming out. I'm glad I got to be able to sit in for the mayor today and be able to witness, you know, history. You all are a part of history, so you should applaud yourselves for that. And with that, I am happy to support the motion as well. So will we take a vote now? Okay. Granicus. It's Granicus. Our new system. There we go. What happened?
No, it's Teresa's fault.
Do, okay. Okay, and that passes 4-0. Congratulations. Okay, we will now adjourn to closed session. We will reconvene at 7 o'clock here in Chambers. Thank you.